guys, so here I'm going to show you a third hip mobility activity where you can take a look at your freedom to move your hips, and in doing so you can use the same activity to begin working on your hip flexibility, your hip mobility, your hip comfort. So the previous two activities used an object for you to either lean on or bear weight into. The first one was using a wall. The second one was using a bench to have your hands on. And that just allowed you to steady your body, that allowed you to perhaps relax some tone that you had to unconsciously hold on to begin shifting your hips into ranges that maybe you're not able to get to otherwise. Now we're going to step away from the wall, we're going to get our hands off of the chair, off of the bench, and we're going to be trying to shift our hip sockets around on top of the balls of our hip joint. So these are hip circles, and it's kind of like doing a hula hoop motion without the hula hoop. Hula hooping is great, but you have to do it at a certain speed in order to keep it from falling to the ground. So we take the hula hoop away. You can throw it in later on if you're able to do it. That's awesome. But what you're going to be doing is having your feet flat on the ground and try to keep them relatively flat while you're doing it. If you find that you roll out on your feet or you tend to pop to your toes, your heels, that's going to end up locking up your hips. So try to be aware and attuned to keeping feet steady on the ground. Comfortable width. You may be more comfortable with a bit of a toe out at your feet. That's all fine. But what you're going to be doing is first rocking side to side. And just feel how one side is probably easier, maybe not, to shift side to side. And as you get comfortable with that, you start to allow yourself to go to the front, side to side. And then, as that gets comfortable, you start to allow yourself to go to the back. Come to that side. Go to the back. Come to that side. And you have to explore what is the range that you can shift your hips back, you can shift your hips forward while you're going side to side and still keep your feet on the ground. Once you lose that contact, something up above is going to have to tighten up, and it'll be throughout your whole body, and you bet it'll be at your hips and at your shoulders, because number one priority of the brain is always survival. And the top priority above all else is going to be don't smash your face, head righting. So you got to keep your feet steady, and then as you get to know that range, you start going one direction, and then you start going the other direction. Now this is where if it gets hard to do this, or you feel as if it's a little beyond where you're at, but the other two activities have gotten easier, you can put your hands on a doorway. You can put your hands forward on a counter, fingertips, you can use some walking sticks, just somewhere out here where it's comfortable and you can just orient yourself. You could even bear a little bit of weight if that's helpful. But you begin by shifting side to side. The goal is free hands. You then start shifting front into side, back into side, until you can just do kind of a loop. You go one direction and then you go the other direction. And it can look a little silly to onlookers, but you know, life's too short to care too much about what others think about the way you look. This is a great activity that'll really help you sense where your hang-ups are. It's very common for it to be more difficult going one direction than the other for folks. It's very common to feel where you can't get into on one side versus the other. And if there's any discomfort with this, it's important for you to not work through that, because it'll tend to be a dunk or a chafe. Those are things that you don't want to try to sand out. You want to respect it. And if you are feeling like going through this activity, you end up catching or sort of running into a firm barrier with your hips, don't work through it. Go back, keep working on the previous two activities, because there's some fundamentals that haven't been met for you to succeed with this activity. But if it's just difficult, if it just feels like coordination, this is where you want to get to. So the goal would be to be able to do a hip circle clockwise just as well as you can counterclockwise. And you're able to do it multiple times without fatigue and without falling on over, and perhaps you can even talk and have a conversation while you're doing it. Your life's going to be a lot better if you have that freedom at your hips. And try these. Ask any questions if you got them as you go through them. Regardless, I hope you're well and I hope your hips are feeling great.